welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Friday morning, the 6th of March 2026. Hope you're enjoying yourselves. I hope you're doing okay. Welcome back from last night's footballing action in the Premier League. We had one game, the final game of match day 29, as Crystal Palace put three past Tottenham Hotspurs, who could only score one in a very, very poor performance for Tottenham Hotspurs, particularly in that first half. Then we will also discuss, at least, or talk about the departure of Walid from being the Moroccan national team coach. The guy that made all the wonders not too far back, and that was he made the wonders as he guided Morocco to their first ever semi-final of the World Cup, and subsequently to be the first country from Africa to reach that stage of the competition. So we'll be talking about that and more in this broadcast. Of course, we'll get to look at what's to come over the weekend. I do know for a fact, like I've told you before, there will be no Premier League football this weekend. Instead, it's dedicated to the oldest competition in English football. That's the FA Cup, as it reaches the round of 16. And it will return after this weekend. It will then return in the aftermath of the March international break that will be in early April. Yeah, that's what will be coming away. Then today there will be a video premiering on the channel. In that video, I do discuss my worries about Arsenal. Despite predicting that they will win the Premier League title, I do share my concerns for Arsenal for the remainder of the season, because it's a very busy part or end of the season, because let's say we have 3 months left. That's March, April, and May. These 3 months are going to be very, very critical to determine their success this season, and it's going to be a very busy 3 months. Ordinarily, 3 months does not sound too little to play 8 games of the Premier League. That's fine. But remember, they are still engaged in 4 competitions. So that means it's going to be a very, very busy schedule. And of course, forgetting not that in between there, you have a fortnight, a period of the international break. And usually the international break, this March international break that will be coming our way is one that national team managers are going to have as the final roll of the dice, to sort of give us a glimpse into what their aspirations or what their squads will look like going into the FIFA World Cup 2026 that will be played in the USA, Canada, and Mexico, that has less than 100 days left to be for the ball to be kicked. So that will be the importance of it. And usually that also means that majority of your first team players are going to be summoned to their respective national teams. Expect that. Some teams are going to be playing in the World Cup playoffs, the likes of Italy. So that means players like Riccardo Carafiori from Arsenal and whatever else are going to be a key part of that. So if your hope was that maybe during the international break, clubs will use that period for their players to catch a breather, I think again. On the African continent, I do not think there will be much. I think they should be playing the AFCON qualifiers for 2027, because that one is about a year and a few months are left to its kickoff. So really, that's the importance of that. Anyways, for those of you that are just joining us on the broadcast, welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. And I say to you that please stick with us, stick around and share your views with us. Now, let's start off with Tottenham Hotspurs. Tottenham Hotspurs are far from having a desirable season. I think the writing is on the wall that it is far from a desirable season. Unfortunately, contrary to last season, where regardless of their performances in the Premier League, they were not staring down the barrel of relegation because the bottom three teams in Leicester City, in Southampton, I forget the other, were so poor that Tottenham did not need to worry about them. This season round, because last season, regardless, Tottenham still finished 17th on the Premier League log. And that was terrible, a finish. This season, it doesn't look like they're going to have an improvement or a significant improvement off of that. I remember when the season was starting, and as I usually do, or as I have usually done for the last 3 seasons running, is come to you here and give you my predictions. And you can go over to the channel and look at that video in which I do discuss my predictions for the 2026 Premier League season. And in those predictions, my bold prediction about Tottenham Hotspurs was that they would finish eighth on the Premier League log. And I put them eighth because, of course, they had a new manager. They're going to go through a revolution of changes. They're going to have responsibilities in the UEFA Champions League, which tends to sort of disrupt the momentum domestically in the league. I had them in eighth, behind Man United in seventh, with Newcastle sixth and Aston Villa fifth. Now, suffice to say, it's not going according to plan. In any case, below them, I had Nottingham Forest. Jesus Christ. How wrong did I have to be? But anyways, so in other words, that is indicative of what has been a terrible season. Now, in this terrible season, similar to the last one, is that their squad has been depleted by injuries. It's been injury after injury, some of them very long-term injuries to very key players. And when I say very key players, these are players that when available, are a no-brainer. They are some of the first names on the team sheet when a game is going to be kicked in as far as the Premier League is concerned. So if you're Tottenham Hotspurs or you're Tottenham Hotspur fan, regardless of who is in the dugout, you expect that James Maddison is going to be on that team sheet for as long as he's fit because he's your best creative player that you have. You expect that Dejan Kulusevski is going to be on that deal sheet. You expect that Muhammad Kudus is going to be on that pitch. So that in itself is an attacking force that they've missed for quite a while. When it comes to their midfield, yes, they do have Yuvis Bissouma, Joao Prelinya, Pape Matsa, Conor Gallagher. Excuse me about that. As among the players that are available to their disposal, it goes without saying that the likes of Rodrigo Bentancur have been quite pivotal in that midfield. So missing some of these players is is of a certain level of significance. And then, of course, in addition to the Dijat Space, Wilson Odebat, Destin Udogi, Lucas Bagville, those are players that then give you the squad depth to rotate when it comes to cup competitions. Now, it's always said that when you're a team and you're fighting on all fronts, that's in 4 competitions, because if you're a Premier League team and you qualified for Europe, you're going to participate in 4 competitions across the campaign. The EFL Cup, also called the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup or the Emirates FA Cup, the Premier League, and whichever competition you've qualified for in Europe, whether it's the UEFA Champions League, UEFA Conference League, or the UEFA Europa League. Those will be the 4 competitions in which you partake. Now, there's a cliche that sometimes teams do not have the strength in squad, not in terms of depth, but also predominantly in terms of quality to compete on across those fronts. So what happens is that they exit cup competitions quite early, the EFL Cup, the FA Cup. Now, remember, the FA Cup does not start for most teams until January. So, but regardless of when it starts, the argument is that when you exit those competitions, you then get to concentrate your squad, your small squad or your big squad, but with limited quality on the other two competitions. In other words, fight to finish within a good place in the Premier League and then, stay competitive on the continent. Tottenham Hotspurs did exit the EFL Cup and the FA Cup quite early on. Nonetheless, we've not seen that the advantage for them that comes with that. About a day ago, I was having a discussion, a football discussion. I was a panelist on a TikTok live forum with a couple of panelists and a good and fair of listeners. And somebody made the argument that Arsenal are preoccupied with so many competitions that if they need to win the Premier League, they need to exit some of them. And I did not agree with them. So my question to them was, okay, first of all, Arsenal have one of the best squads there is in the Premier League in terms of depth and quality. Two, if you're Mikel Arteta, would you rather bet on 4 competitions and end up winning 2, or would you rather bet on 1 or 2 and possibly end up with nothing? Because that's also a possibility. The same way it is a possibility of betting on all 4 of them and not win any of them. That's just a given possibility. So my question to the person was, so they are in the finals of the EFL Cup. Do you suggest that they go and play a poor game or field a very weak team so that they get beat by Man City and exit? It's a goddamn final. So that's not an option. When it comes to the 50th round of the FA Cup, now, when it comes to the FA Cup, first of all, you need luck on your side that you get to play lesser opponents. When I say lesser opponents, is that the demands of the game become lesser if you're playing Mansfield Town as opposed if you're playing Newcastle or Manchester City or Chelsea or Liverpool or Wolverhampton Wanderers or a Premier League team for that matter. So my question to them was, so would you rather they get knocked out by Mansfield Town? How is that going to sound with all their squad quality? That, let's say, okay, their game comes on the weekend against Mansfield Town. You feel Kepa Arrizabalaga, Christian Mosquera, maybe Ricardo Carafiori, a Miles Lewis Kelly, a left back. Let's say you go for a Josh Nicholas or a Marley Solomon at right back in the absence of Ben White, and you do not want to risk Kieran Timber, or you need to give him a rest. In midfield, go with a Christian Norgard. In addition to that, of course, they do miss Mikel Merino, but I'm trying to remember who they could field in there, for a midfield. Let's say, because you go with Kai Havertz to get some more minutes because he's just returned from injury, at least get 45 minutes of game time. You go with the Max Dorman, you go with the Gabriel Jesus, you go with the Gabriel Martinelli, and who else? I'm trying to think. And whoever else you may add to that team in that midfield. Would you rather the quality of that lineup lose to a Mansfield Town just because you want Arsenal to exit early? And if you're Mikel Arteta, what kind of instructions do you give to that team? Now, majority of those players that are playing in these cup competitions, at least at those lower stages, are the same players that are not getting a lot of game time. Kepa Arrizabalaga, Miles Lewis Kelly, Christian Norgard, Christian Mosquera, because Christian Mosquera's time on the pitch has largely been dependent on the absence of senior defenders, whether it's Ben White, Kieran Timber, Gabriel Magalhaes, William Saliba, it's predominantly been that, and a couple of substitutions to see out games. So, what instructions if you're Mikel Arteta? Now, those players, every time they get an opportunity in the cup competition, they ought to play to prove to you as the manager, or to prove to the manager that they are worthy of being thought about for a slot in the main starting team for the Premier League games, for the Champions League games. So in other words, they're going to battle it out for a win. It's not to say that they cannot lose, but it's lesser news if you lose to a Newcastle, if you lose to a Wolverhampton Wanderers in a cup competition, than if you lose to a Mansfield Town. I mean, the League One side, a mid-table League One side, really? So that argument, for me, does not suffice. Now, let me be clear. I understand why some people make that kind of argument, because fighting on all four fronts sort of stretches your squad. It impacts load management, because when you're fighting on all four fronts and you have injuries, like Arsenal do, for example, William Saliba, Martin Odegaard, Mikel Merino, Kai Havertz is just returned. All these have been players that have been out through injury. Now, if you're missing players, it impacts on how you rotate your squad. Because if you're missing them, then you do not have much wiggle room to rotate that squad, you know? So I understand that bit. But like I said, with all the resources that Mikel Arteta has at his disposal, or that have been put at his disposal, it's injustifiable to his bosses to say, yeah, we exited those competitions early to fight on just two fronts. They're not going to have it. They gave him this kind of squad that he has to fight on all fronts. You know, they may not win it all, but at least they will die trying. So, reverting back to Tottenham Hotspurs, exiting cup competitions has not helped their Premier League form. So, it's not a given that when you exit cup competitions, you're going to have better form. Let me give you another example. Look at Man United. Before Michael Carrick takes over, they had exited the FA Cup quite early on, losing to Brighton, I think by 2-1. They lost to Grimsby Town and got exited the EFL Cup at the first time of asking. They were nowhere in Europe. They only had the Premier League literally to play. In other words, outside the Premier League, Man United has only played 2 games outside the Premier League. In other words, at the end of the season, Man United players, for those that may have played every minute or in every game, will have played 40 games. Are Manchester United leading the Premier League table? No. They are third. And they are third because Carrick walks in and won 6 out of 8 games, lost 1, drew 1. But the same well-rested Man United overall throughout the campaign just lost to a 10-man Newcastle, who play Man City over the weekend and subsequently have responsibilities in the UEFA Champions League. You know? So, it's not a given that once you exit this competition or the other, suddenly you're going to look much stronger in the others. It's not a given. So that line of argument, that school of argument, for me, does not stand or does not hold much water. I understand why people try to make it. But for me, and the other example I'll give you is that I used to see it quite often with St. Charles Wenger. For example, if you had a game in the FA Cup, then a game in the Premier League, and in the Champions League, predominantly, he was known for fielding lesser teams or young teams when it came to their cup competition exploits, the EFL Cup, the FA Cup, and things like that. But I would see him rest his players, let's say, on a Premier League weekend in a build-up to a Champions League game, midweek game, and then he loses the game at the weekend, and he also goes in the UEFA Champions League and loses that game as well. And you're thinking to yourself, why did you bother risking and dropping points over the weekend and yet still lost anyway? That's why I support managers that take it game by game. Of course, managers still do that all the time in resting or reserving certain players when they have midweek games in the UEFA Champions League. They still do that. But in what position are you doing it from? Again, let's take the example of Tottenham Hotspurs last season. The squad was depleted with injuries. They knew they were not going to get relegated, and regardless. So what Ange Postecoglou did was concentrate all his resources and focus on winning the Europa League, which luckily for him, he managed to do, beating Man United by goal to nil in the finals. That was okay. But imagine if he had also not won the UEFA Europa League. What conversation would we have had about him? So sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't. You know? But in sacrificing to concentrate on that one competition, the UEFA Europa League, look where they finished in the Premier League, 17th, near relegation. That ordinarily, because they lost a total of 22 Premier League games last season, that ordinarily in another season, that is a kind of form or record that gets you relegated. Present day as we speak, Tottenham are in the conversation of relegation because following their defeat yesterday at the hands of Crystal Palace implies that they are only 1 point above the relegation zone. That whereas they sit 17th, is it 17th or 16th? 16th, I think, on the Premier League clock. They're only a point ahead of Nottingham Forest and West Ham United in 18th place. Tell me if there's any Tottenham Hotspur fan that would want to be in that position. I certainly don't want to think so. Yesterday, we saw the fans leave the stadium before halftime, and others, or very many of them, at halftime. They could not watch it any longer. So anyways, let's get into the game itself. Crystal Palace beating Tottenham Hotspurs by 3-1. Should have been more. In the history of football, I've seen a lot of crazy decisions, stupid ones at most. But yesterday's decision to rule out Ismail Sarr's initial goal for an offside is arguably one of the worst decisions that will go down in my memory in the history of football. He scores a brilliant goal, but is judged to have been offside. Now, a player being judged to be offside and having the goal chopped is not news. It happens all the time. But what makes this one stand out is that he's judged to be offside because his face was offside. Mark my words, not his head, his face. And Oliver Glasner joked about this in his post-match press conference, saying he told Ismail Sarr that he has a long nose. And that's why his goal did not stand, because he can score with the nose. So for me, that was a bad decision, really, for all intents and purposes, and the benefit of the game. That was just a bad decision. So Ismail Sarr has a goal chopped, and that was in the 29th minute. About 5 minutes later, Tottenham go to the other side and score a goal through Dominic Solanke, with Achai Gray providing the assist. Listen to this chronology of events properly. He scores, gives Tottenham the lead, and you're thinking to yourself, well, it's game on. And perhaps we're going to have a very entertaining London derby. Excuse me, as both teams are from London. That's Crystal Palace and Tottenham. 4 minutes after going into the lead, the match day or the day's captain, Mick van der Ven, decides to commit a halwa. Now, I do not know what goes through players' minds. I've never played at a level that high with the stakes that high. But one thing I know for sure is that not all risks are worth it. You take certain risks and they will make you look stupid. Because it's obvious, even to a breastfeeding baby, that you making that decision is a stupid one. So 4 minutes after taking the lead, the day's captain, Mickey van der Ven, decides to pull Ismail Sarr, who was going through on goal, and he denied a goal scoring opportunity. Now, bear in mind, as he denies the goal scoring opportunity, he's the last line of defense. So that implies two things: that you're conceding a penalty, that you're getting sent off. He got sent off first, penalty was given. Ismail Sarr, in the 40th minute, steps up and he converts from the penalty spot. I've defended managers before, and I'll continue to defend them for quite some time until I'm proven otherwise. I do not think there's a manager that plays to lose. I do not think that a manager can determine everything that goes on the pitch. Now, the decision for Mickey van der Ven to pull Ismail Sarr is personal. It's a personal mistake. Is a lapse in concentration, is a show of poor judgment. So he pulls him, like I said, and he literally made the decision for the referee. If you're going to give the referee a decision to make, think wisely. Now, you have your team reduced to 10 men because you've made a stupid decision and you got sent off. A penalty is awarded and your team concedes the equalizer. So the question for me is, why did you even bother stopping him? Because him going through was not a given that he was going to score. Trust your goalkeeper to do something, to come good every time you fall short as defenders. But also, even if you were to score, that wouldn't have been the end of the world, because Tottenham would have still fought on. The game will be simply back to square one. It will be 1-1, and then they fight again. There is a cliche that it's harder to play against 10 men than it is to play against 11. Now, the rationale of that is that when you have your team reduced to 10 men, you're going to have 9 players working twice as hard to fill the void of that one individual. And sometimes it's worked out, but it's equally not a given. Sometimes it doesn't. And yesterday was one of those days that whereas Tottenham had had a poor first half, it was only bound to continue, given that they were down to 10 men. So, just after scoring the penalty, 6 minutes later, in the first minute of stoppage time of the first stanza, Adam Wharton wins the ball back. I think it was Pape Matsar that played the loose pass and plays into against Strand Larson, who nutmegs Vicario to score, to make it 2-1. And then another 6 minutes later, we're talking about the 7th minute of stoppage time of the first stanza. Once again, Ismail Sarr converts from close range as he nicks the ball before Vicario gets to it from a pass by Adam Wharton that was played between the two defenders. I think it was João Paulinho alongside Pedro Porro. And Pedro Porro was calling on to Vicario to come out quick enough to deal with that ball. Now, Vicario did not get that in time enough because that ball is nicked into the back of the net by Ismail Sarr. And suddenly it's 3-1 going into halftime. Pedro Bola says, back from the exam, Wolves beat Liverpool. Yep. I hope you do excel in your exams. It's a pleasure to have you back. So, yeah, Liverpool got beat by Wolverhampton Wanderers. And Chelsea demolished Aston Villa. Tottenham Hotspur got beat by Crystal Palace. And the relegation threat is real for them. It's not just a conversation that we get to have. It's one that is living freshly in their memories because they are staring down the barrel of the relegation gun. Anytime Nottingham Forest or West Ham could shoot them down into the drop zone. So, for me, there's not much you can blame Igor Tudor on because he fielded a good team. Mickey van der Ven does something stupid that forces him to make changes, withdrawing Rando Kolomwani and Souza for Conor Gallagher and Yves Bissouma. How many times have we seen players let their teams down with stupid decisions? We've seen it with Chelsea, where they get so many red cards. We've seen it with Christian Romero, with all the red cards he suffered this season. So much so that he missed yesterday's game through suspension. Now, as you hope for his return, another goes out the window. You know, in terms of suspension. Pedri says, what are your views about Barcelona's game against Atletico de Madrid? For those of you that are wondering, Pedri is asking about the reverse fixture of the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey, in which Barcelona beat Atletico de Madrid by 3-0. Almost came close to completing the remontada, having lost the first leg by 4-0 at the Riyadh Air Stadium. Now, it was a beautiful game. Barcelona were expectedly dominant. They did all the right things. Sometimes you felt that luck was not on their side, but also you got to give the Atletico de Madrid goalkeeper his credit. What Atletico de Madrid fairly did well was avoiding conceding early goals in either half. As you could see, whereas Barcelona go into halftime with a desirable 2-0 advantage, they would have loved perhaps to have scored more or those goals to have come much earlier, you know. But their first goal comes around the 29th, 30th minute mark. That's when they get their first goal through Marc Beno. And then at the tail end of the first half, Aston Villa conceded a penalty. Atletico de Madrid conceded a penalty, which Rafinha converts, and it's 2-0. So at that point, at halftime, the deficit has already been halved. So what Barcelona needed to do is go look for the next 2 goals and send the game at least into extra time. Well, Atletico de Madrid did not afford them that. It was a beautiful performance from the likes of Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, among others. But it just wasn't their day. So they lost by 3-0. So they won by 3-0 and got knocked out 4-3 on aggregate. So those are my views on the Barcelona Atletico de Madrid game. Spurs in the UEFA Champions League, Spurs in the Premier League. Yes, it's been a tale of two different worlds. Being fairly successful in the UEFA Champions League and being oddly unsuccessful in the Premier League. Apologies, guys. It's become a habit of me to overyawn in the early morning hours of a broadcast. So, For me, basically, I leave it at that with Tottenham, with Barcelona. But just simply to sum up Tottenham Hotspurs, I've said this before. If Ugo Tudor stays until the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League against Atletico Madrid, their Spurs get beat in both fixtures, I think we would have seen enough of Ugo Tudor that he would face the sack. Yep. But also that will be dependent on whether he will have registered any win whatsoever in the Premier League, because he's yet to register any. 3 games he's coached his side versus Arsenal, versus Fulham, and versus Crystal Palace, and he's yet to win a game of football. So that's something to, to bear in mind. Anyways, your views and thoughts on that. So quickly, let's move over to, okay, maybe finally at Tottenham Hotspurs, because I do not think we'll have another time to do this. Tottenham Hotspurs have gone through a host of changes over the last 1 year or so. They've changed managers twice now. Ange Postecoglou exits. Thomas Frank comes in. You fire him and bring Igor Tudor. So that bit of lack of consistency can also impact the team. Then they've had some behind the closed doors departures, the likes of Daniel Levy, who was then the chairman, had been the chairman of the club for 25 years. Fabio Paratisi was a senior official within the boardroom structure, left early this year. You had Scottman, also exit. So really, Scottman was the chief football officer. He's currently on gardening leave. Their head of sports science, Nick Davis, left the club after then the head of medical, that was Geoff Scott, had been at the club for quite a very, very long time. He's since left the club. So you've had these enormous changes within the Tottenham Hotspur hierarchy. And that, in one way or the other, as much as we hate to hear it, but it has a certain level of impact on the players on the pitch. There may not be a straight footpath leading you to that, but rest assured, it has an impact on the team. So Tottenham Hotspurs have gone through all those, sort of changes because Adam Brett joined the club as director of performances from Brighton, and he was sacked by July 2025. So it becomes difficult in the long run. It becomes really, really difficult in the long run. And I remember they're not the first team to go through that sort of turbulence with key senior figure departures and stuff like that. Arsenal have had to go through a fair share of that. Vinay Vektishim leaving, Edu Gaspar Dawood leaving, Pamet Saka is leaving, Tim Lewis has left the club, Jason Aito has left the club. And when you rewind things further back, there are also a couple of other faces that left the club at Arsenal, So, but more importantly, if I'm the perfect example of Arsenal, is you ought to look back in those later years of Arsene Wenger, when Arsene Wenger leaves, So you have a chunk or a host of senior officials leaving the club, and it's going to impact. It's going to impact those players or how the pitch goes, because that top brass is directly linked to the manager that is managing this team. You remember part of Enzo Maresca's frustrations came from the medical department, independent medical department of Chelsea. It wasn't long before he was sacked. So Excuse me. So expect that to happen. But allow me move away from um, Tottenham Hotspurs. Now, Morocco head coach Walid Regra- Regragui has left Morocco with immediate effect as the head coach. That decision has been made ahead of the World Cup. I do not think it's a good decision, but it is their decision, and has been replaced by Mohamed Owabi. They had considerations for a former Sevilla manager. He's called George Sampowali. Yes, George Sampowali. But looks like they will not be going through with that appointment. I was reading somewhere earlier on that discussions had been held for George Sampowali to take over from Walid, um, but that deal fell through and it did not materialize despite having had everything literally agreed in principle. I do not know much about Muhammad Owabi, but the jury is out there because he does have some really, really big shoes to fill because he replaces the Walid who guided Morocco to the finals of the AFCON 2025 before losing by goal to nil against Senegal. I think Pape Gueye scoring in that one. Then he made history when he saw Morocco reach the semi-finals of the FIFA Club World Cup, of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar 2022, for Morocco to become the first African country to reach that stage of the competition. So really, he has some really, really big shoes to fill. That's for, Muhammad Wabi. We'll have to wait and see how things go. Moving on. Um, Apparently, this is coming in from Florian Plettenberg in German. He says Hamburg are keen on keeping Arsenal midfielder Fabio Vieira. You remember Arsenal signed Fabio Vieira, I think, was it in 2022? No, 2023, somehow, 2023, around there, from FC Porto for about 35 million pounds, but it's not worked out. And he's gone out on a couple of loan spells, including returning to FC Porto. Currently is on loan in Germany at Hamburg SV. So according to Florian Plettenberg, Hamburg SV would like to keep Fabio Vieira for the long term. To do that, they would need to buy him as his contract with Arsenal runs until June 2027. Early stages, but Hamburg are going to try. However, Vieira has received numerous inquiries. His statistics in the Bundesliga this season is an 8-goal involvement, still very humble or modest. 4 goals and 4 assists are not good enough, in my opinion, but it is what it is. Then moving on, Nottingham Forest, head of global football, that's Edu Gaspar Dawood, is expected to leave the club soon rather than later. He has been already told or asked to stay away from the training ground and or to stay away from the team entirely. According to Ben Jacobs, he adds that he is still working for the club as it stands, regardless of whether regardless of whether he attends training or games, with Forest currently not wanting uncertainty over his future to overshadow their relegation fight. So we know that Edu Gaspar Dawood, as soon as he walked into that Nottingham Forest area, he got into a big disagreement. I don't know over what, but particularly over the squad building with then manager Nuno Espirito Santo. Nuno Espirito Santo came out to make those claims and also added that ever since Edu Gaspar Dawood had been put in charge of managing certain affairs, there had been a rift or a growing gap between him and his boss, Evangelos Marinakis. So instead of wanting Edu Gaspar Daoud to be the go-between or the a middleman, between Evangelos Marinakis and Nuno Espirito Santo wanted Edu out of the way. First of all, for Edu, going into the summer or last summer, was that they need to build a squad broad enough to compete in the UEFA Europa League as well as the Premier League. But Nuno Espirito Santo preferred to have a bit of a closed circle, a neat circle that he can effectively manage without having players disgruntled in the dressing room due to a lack of game time. Hi Pedri says Spurs in the UEFA Champions League will get destroyed by either Atletico Madrid or us. Tottenham is a funny club. Ha ha ha. I mean, Tottenham's decline started back in 2019 after the climax of their project that had at one point finished second on the Premier League log and then reached the finals of the UEFA Champions League in the same season. Sorry, in that season of 2018-2019, they've been on a downward trajectory. Now, really, they've been on a downward trajectory. It goes without saying that somehow they had managed to stay fairly competitive, because in the 2016-2017 season, and this was I think Mauricio Pochettino's fourth season with Tottenham Hotspur. Let's see, 14-15, 15-16, 16-17. Yes, his third season being in charge. They finished second on the Premier League club with 86 points, 7 points behind the eventual champions in Chelsea, who garnered 93 points. Now, that project carries on for the 17-18 season. That's the season when Manchester City made history with 100 Premier League points, Man United coming second with 81 points, while Tottenham Hotspur finished third with 77 points. 4 points, is it 4? Yeah, 4 points adrift of Man United. Then we went into the 2018-2019 season. In that season, Tottenham finished fourth. So you can see it's a gradual decline between where they had finished in 16-17 to 17-18 and 18-19. So this time around, they finished fourth with 71 points behind Chelsea, Liverpool, and the eventual champions, Manchester City. Again, not too bad, because in the same season, whilst they qualified for the UEFA Champions League, they also reached the finals of the UEFA Champions League and lost to Liverpool by 2-0. The subsequent season, 2019-2020, that's when things started going bad, because I think Mauricio Pochettino is sacked, I think 6 months after that, or less than 6 months after the Champions League final. Eventually, they finished sixth on the Premier League log. When he gets sacked, that is when they brought in Jose Mourinho. Anyways, so their decline has not been as abrupt as people may want to think. So, for example, when you look at Tottenham this year, they are yet to win a game of football in 11 games, and that's happening for the first time in their history. Ever since the turn of the new year, and this is something that I've been constantly speaking about, they struggled for results. They played 11 Premier League games. They've drawn about only 4 of those, drawing against Brentford in a goalless draw, 1-1 against Sunderland, that was between 1st and 4th of January, a 2-2 draw against Burnley, and a 2-2 draw against Man City. All the others have been losses: 3-2 to Bournemouth, 2-1 against West Ham, 2-0 against Man United, 2-1 against Newcastle, 4-1 against against Arsenal, 2-1 against Fulham, and 3-1 against Crystal Palace. 13 games. They are yet to win. So how do you even motivate that team? It becomes difficult, really, really difficult. So we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out for Tottenham Hotspurs. Now, when you look at their responsibilities in terms of the Premier League, in terms of upcoming fixtures, in terms of what they ought to do to survive relegation, I think they know what they have to do, because what they have to do is quite very simple. It's win their games. But their next game is against Liverpool. Not easy, even though Liverpool have been blown hot and cold throughout this campaign. After that, they have to play Nottingham Forest, they have to play Sunderland, Brighton and Hove Albion, as well as Wolverhampton Wanderers. Those are the teams that they ought to play. Wolves these days, or at least in the last five games or 4 games, have been almost unplayable. They've been difficult to beat. Liverpool, Arsenal, Aston Villa are testament to that. Nottingham Forest, you do not know what they can bring. We saw them turn up the fire when they went away to the Etihad Stadium. Sunderland have dropped off, but you never know. And then Brighton, not an easy fixture. So the question is, out of the next 5, how many do they win? Because if they don't win any, they'll be in the relegation drop zone by then. Do you go and tussle it against Liverpool? Because their away performance this season has not been that bad. It's been fairly okay. Apologies for the overyawning. I'm equally not sure why. You know? So it's quite difficult. But for me, I thought they even got it wrong in appointing Igor Tudor. Whereas he may be experienced in 7 teams from relegation, he has 0 Premier League experience. Later on, understanding the inner workings of Tottenham Hotspurs, which significant managers have complained about, Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, Ange Postecoglou, and most recently, Igor Tudor himself. He just doesn't get it. He just doesn't get it, you know? So it is what it is. So anyways, we'll leave that at the moment. So like I told you, this weekend, there's no Premier League football. We have FA Cup fixtures at the 50th round, or the the round of 16. And those games kick off today at 11 p.m. when Liverpool play away to Wolves again. Now, it will be quite the story if Wolves were to beat Liverpool again. In any case, that 2-1 victory over them in the Premier League on Tuesday night is testament to the fact that anything is possible. Speaking of anything being possible, by the way, Liverpool get to play early. They have a game in the UEFA Champions League. Of course, they play away. But so do Man City. And yet Man City play on Saturday, late on. They have a game to play away at the Santiago Bernabeu. Pep Guardiola did not understand that. He was wondering, why are we not playing very early on Saturday? You know? But well, we're not the fixture schedulers. Now, but before we get into all the fixtures of the FA Cup, so Real Madrid tonight are up against Celta Vigo. There's that game. Bruhin. Hello, man. How are you? How are you? Who? I'm struggling to read your name, so that's why I'm reading the last part of it, which is who. Who sound Chinese or at least Asian? How are you doing, my brother? Then Motion. Hi, Motion. Good to have you on the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel, guys, if it's your first time here, and help us support what we do. Help support what we do, and let's continue growing. No problem, bro. Just call me who. Indeed, who. You know, the reason that's why I said it sounds Chinese is because they write their who as W-O, or is it W-O-O or W? I know some people pronounce it as W, not W. But whichever way, who sounds Chinese. Anyways, I hope you're doing all right. So Real Madrid are in action against Celta Vigo today. Their last, of course, league fixture was a loss. They lost to Getafe by a goal to nil. They returned to action. They're 4 points adrift of the La Liga standings against Barcelona. Of course, they have that important fixture at the Santiago Bernabeu next week in the UEFA Champions League. That's why they get to play early. We saw the likes of PSG are playing today. PSG are playing Monaco because next week, midweek, they have a game at home against Chelsea. Napoli are up against Torino at a quarter to 11 p.m. Same applies for the PSG Monaco game. That game is going to come at a quarter to 11 p.m. Now, PSG Monaco, these two guys played each other in the playoffs of the UEFA Champions League, and PSG came out on top, winning 5-4 on aggregate. But one was a 2-all draw. That was the reverse fixture, while really the first leg ended in a 3-2 victory for PSG, with PSG coming from 2-0 down to win that one. In both games, AC Monaco were reduced to 10 men. In the second leg, particularly, it was Koulibaly that was sent off and things like that. I'm nowhere from that region. It's just some random username like bra IDK who. It's random. Don't worry. Okay. Now, when you say IDK, there's one of the renowned journalists that I interviewed not so far back on the channel called IDK. IDK is short form for Ismail Dakaba Chigongo. So, anyways, it's all good. And then also, Bayern Munich play Borussia Mönchengladbach at 10:30 p.m. Now, guys, I do not know. What am I going to watch, tonight? Because there's plenty to watch, and it's all good to watch. Real Madrid Celta Vigo is a must-watch for me. PSG Monaco is a no-brainer. Then I would have loved to watch Bayern Munich versus Borussia Mönchengladbach. Napoli against Torino. There's Wolves versus Liverpool. I only have 2 eyes, and I only have 2 devices on which I can watch a game of football, unless somebody buys me an extra TV. Where are you from, and which club do you support? IDK means I do not know. That's in the English short form of social media and stuff like that. IDKs, I don't know. I'm from Kampala, Uganda. Thanks for asking. In case you're not familiar, Uganda is a small landlocked country in the eastern part of Africa. Our neighbors are Kenya, Tanzania, South Sudan in the north, Congo in the west, of course, Kenya in the east, Rwanda in the southwest. Those are the countries with which we share borders with as a landlocked country. So, yeah. Um, Thanks for asking. You also put the question, which team do you support? First of all, I love football in general, but I do support Arsenal, I do support Real Madrid and the Brazil national team. Thank you. Yes, yes, I know Uganda, of course. Where are you from? You could be from Uganda as well, and I'm here laboring to explain myself. He's from Uganda and supports Barcelona because it's the greatest club in. Only believe the first part of that statement before the end. Pedri has been trying to entice me into supporting Barcelona. Um, this is the one thing I can say. Whereas I'm a Real Madrid fan, I've never, I've never hated Barcelona. I may have disliked certain aspects of them, but I've never hated them. The reason for that for me is simple. My greatest ever player is Ronaldinho Gaucho, in my opinion, and he played for Barcelona. So you can see why the correlation there. Who says IDK says I'm from India? Haha. We are we are good at geography, so I know most of the countries and all. Okay, that's good to know. How is India? What part of India? New Delhi. As if I know many of them. There's another city that is very common with India. There's New Delhi or Delhi. No, actually it's not New Delhi. I think it's Delhi. Then Punjab. Um, so what part of India are you from anyway? Not that I'm very familiar with the geographics of India, but in Uganda, we also have a very sizable Indian community. And yeah, it's a very, very big, community. I know Mahara, Shatra. Oh, Mumbai. Yes, Mumbai was the one I was looking for. You say I'm from the city of Mumbai. Maharashtra is the state. Wow. The one thing I know, not the one thing, but one of the things or some of the things I know about India is that one, their love for cricket, two, their respect for cows, maybe not in the entirety of India, but at least a good part of it. I think they have this notion that people who die return differently, oftentimes as cows, and they don't eat cows. Majority of them do not eat cows. Then what's the other thing? They like spiced food. I think they have like a million itinerary of spices. Then they love street food. However, their hygiene is not good. From what I've seen, I won't speak. I don't speak with authority on that, but from what I've seen, Indians and hygiene are very parallel in many cases. Somebody is cooking. I do not know if they have no problem with rats because in Pakistan, I am led to believe they eat rats. Somebody is cooking for you food, and then there is a rat running around, and then it's nicking on that and that. I've seen those kinds of videos online. Let me hope it's not a misrepresentation of your country. You know. Okay. Who says yes? Yes, I do not eat meat at all. And here we do not eat cows because cows give us milk, so we consider them our mothers. So let me ask, what happens to the cows when they age? Like when they've aged? Because ordinarily, a cow may give, let's say, a bath maybe 7 times before it really comes of age. So you've been milking it, you get, Jesus Christ. I hope you're not a vegetarian because from this, what you're saying, you say you don't eat meat. Vegetarians, man. I mean, what? Anyway, it's a section of society. It's a belief that people have. I have no qualms with it, but I mean, anyway, I just love the taste of meat. Pedro says, your mother, oh, okay. Well, Pedro, there's that part of a belief system. And I remember there's a comedian called Fluffy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fluffy, but Fluffy was making these jokes about him going to India, and he was talking about the traffic in India. And he said, and actually, he had visited the city of Mumbai. He spoke about how Indians have no respect for traffic lights and sometimes road rules, that bikes are all over the place. The way you have Uganda. Somebody called it organized chaos in Uganda because there's so many borders in the capital, but particularly in the city center, and they're trying to reduce on that by creating gazetted zones so that we can get a bit more orderly. So he said, for example, somebody will drive past an accident or somebody that has been knocked down and be like, they'll get picked away, or people move on like nothing has happened. And they'll be driving or riding at all sorts of speeds. Then, if they dare find a cow crossing the road, they're going to stop. They won't say anything, they'll just stop until the cow crosses. And I'm thinking to myself, how do you have more respect for a cow than you have for fellow humans or human life? But I understand, I sort of understand the belief system there. So, IDK or who? What team do you support? You say, I'm a vegetarian. Yes, I used to eat meat, but I left it completely. At least you used to eat. So now you know how good it tastes. Now, let me ask, because some people who claim to be vegetarians are not actually vegetarians. They just do not eat certain meats. Now, vegetarians do not eat anything that sheds blood. Anything that sheds blood, whether it's fish, whether it's chicken, and any animal, for that matter. But then you have those who say, particularly I'm making reference to Indians, they will not eat cow because it's part of their tradition and their belief system, but they will eat chicken, they will eat goat, they will eat mutton, and things like that. You get. So the same way you have people from Mongolia, they eat a lot of horse. Growing up, I did think horse was part of the menu, that it was edible. All I knew was if you wanted to eat meat, it's either going to be cow, goat, or sheep, or some wild animal that you hunted, an antelope or something. I didn't know crocodile meat was being eaten. But anyways, forgive my naivety. Okay. You say, yes, I've seen the Fluffy video. Okay. Those who do not eat meat because they want to save animals are so deluded. If you are so deluded, if you eat plants and other things, they require energy too, and animals are born to help humans develop. Now, you say I'm from there, so I'll tell you the reality. Because of our crazy population, we have a lot of very, very poor people, so they do not have the equipment for the level of hygiene. I'm going to disagree with you on that one, IDK. Or who? I'm going to disagree with you on that one. Yes, I understand India has so many people. The population is crazy. I think what they have, is it 1.4 billion people? Now, I understand that bit, and it makes part of being clean a bit difficult. Now, but you see, hygiene begins with the individual hygiene. That, for example, if this is my workspace, it has to be clean. Just imagine, and I remember the other day, Pedro commenting about seeing my table for the first time. Just imagine I come to you live, there's all litter in the background, there's all litter on my table, and all sorts of things. It may look a bit disorganized, but it's clean. So, when it comes to hygiene, I understand that having a big population adds pressure on that hygiene. But the individual, you must operate within. I mean, you look at people, they're cooking food, they're touching people's food, and it looks unhygienic. I mean, they may be used to living that way, and I'm not saying Uganda is perfect, that people are all hygienic. Uganda has lots of poor people. But the way it is with society, some are clean, some are not. But with the street food, Jesus Christ. I don't know. Let me ask IDK or who. What's India's relationship with rats? Do they look at them as enemies? The way we look at them here as being rodents that will come, if it enters your house, it's either going to destroy your things, it will eat your clothes, it will bite your sofas and things like that, it will nick on your food. What's the relationship there? Do you also have a certain respect for them, that you just let them live within society, or you try to kill them? Because from what I've seen, I've never seen an Indian try to kill a rat. From what I've heard is Pakistanis eat rats. And even in Uganda, we have communities. Even in West Africa, they eat rats. Even in Uganda, when you go to the eastern part of Uganda and the northern part of Uganda, they eat the rats. In the central region where I'm from, we do not. But they eat the rats. So I have nothing against people eating the rats, if that's their prerogative. But what's the relationship with rats there? Okay. Sorry, guys. The conversation has digressed away from football, but it's also the beauty of having this forum, that we get to understand some of our followers and the communities from which they come from. But also, who or IDK, please tell us what team do you support, if any, by the way. You say, okay. Pedro says, eat cow, sheep, goat, chicken, no pig, horse, cats, dogs. Are there people who eat cats? I've never heard of that. I know people who eat dogs. I think, is it in Congo? DRC Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, they eat dogs. In Nigeria, they eat dogs. I think in China, too, they eat dogs, and some other Asian countries. In Uganda, pork is a big thing. So pork is eaten. Pedri, I respect your opinion a lot, like I respect everyone's. In my opinion, animals deserve to live, so we shouldn't kill them. I do not think our protein is more important than a life. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, that's just a belief matter, or an opinion, a difference of opinion. Pedri says, not all people stink. Not all people stink. Respectfully, India does have hygiene issues. In terms of the people, the individuals, I do not know whether they stink or not. I can't speak to that. The ones I've had the little chance to interact with in Uganda do not stink. And for me, it's about their working environment, really, especially when it comes to street food and things like that. It's about their working environment. And if you're working in an environment that is very unhygienic, it makes me wonder, how about the extension of you as the individual? Because at least, let's say, if we are both street food vendors, and we are clean persons, we'll try to make sure that the place within which we work is clean. Yes, I understand maybe city authorities have to do the cleaning or take away the garbage, but I mean, it doesn't hurt for me to have a trash can, and you have a trash can. We can't sweep our rubbish and clean our working environment. So, usually, if you are working in a dirty environment and you're comfortable working in that environment, it makes me wonder, how about you in personal hygiene? Are you then taking care of yourself? But I do not mean to say that any of them stink. Who you say, okay, you say, yes, yes, I know the people should prioritize hygiene more. It's an issue, but the non hygienic place is not that common as you think it is. Those places are very rare, but people only like showing it. Okay, I understand. I know what it means to somebody to use a certain part of a country or of your life to misrepresent you as an individual. So I understand if when you explain it that way. You say I support Bayern Munich. Man, I watch football a lot. I love the Premier League too. In the Premier League, I prefer Arsenal. Ha ha ha. Oh, good. Good to know. So Bayern Munich are in action tonight at 10:30 p.m. Against Borussia Mönchengladbach. That will be a midnight in your country, in India. Let me hope India has a uniform time zone, that they are not like Russia, who have more than 8, 9 different time zones. We have to say, though, India has great food. Yeah, people speak good things about Indian food. That it's rich. It's rich. Although, again, basing on what I've seen, there's a channel called the Best Ever Food Review Show. I'm sure if you're interested in that kind of content, you must have seen Sonny Side. He's actually created an entire channel for Indian food. Sometimes my reservation with it, sometimes too much oil. You guys love oil like Jesus Christ. Too much oil. But their food being spicy, people say they're very good at preparing rice. Indians, Jesus Christ. Now, the rice that has meat, apologies, IDK or who, if you find the meat part of it safe, but for me, it's a delicacy. So I think if an Indian offered to prepare for me a meal, I would say prepare for me rice. This is the way they nicely prepare their rice. And so we have Indians who own restaurants in Uganda. So I want to watch football today, but the games are at 1 a.m. For me, we have just one time zone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Some of those games are coming late. Now wait when the World Cup comes around, because some of the games will be kicking off at 3 a.m. for you. So we've had a discussion with Pedri here on the forum before about the timelines for the World Cup. Oh, it's one time zone. Okay, same for Uganda. Yeah, we have oily stuff, but we also have a lot of great food without oil. So you guys, now life is a cliche. They say when you eat too much oil, you'll become fat. But not all Indians are fat. And I'm not saying all Indians eat a lot of oil, but there's a certain part of India where they eat too much oil, and you're thinking to yourself, don't they get a running stomach? Don't they become so fat? Anyways, it is what it is. In the World Cup, we will all have to wake up early. You'll get used to it. You'll get used to it from now, Loro. Okay. I guess we'll have to adapt. But you and I both know that it's very challenging to, let's say, watch a game at 10 p.m., watch in the next game kickoff maybe at 1 a.m., and then another kickoff at 4 a.m., and yet you have an early morning routine. So, for example, Pedri, imagine you have to watch a game that starts at 1 a.m. and ends at 3 a.m., and then you have to wake up maybe by 5 to prepare for school and things like that. So in the long run, it becomes a bit challenging, really. So people are bound to miss so many games, especially in terms of, TV and stuff like that. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, so those are the fixtures that will be coming your way tonight. Like I've told you, Real Madrid up against Vigo, 11 p.m. Liverpool away to Wolves. That's the FA Cup at 11 p.m. Then at 10:30 p.m. Bayern Munich versus Gladbach, but Gladbach are no longer as competitive as they were a couple of years back. So expect Bayern Munich to win that one. They want to play their game quite early on because next week they play Atlanta. Now that's the beauty about some of these leagues, that they create, they move some of their games to be played earlier to give their teams a bit of an advantage or a bit more extra time of rest and, to so that they can perform better, perhaps, at in the UEFA Champions League. Then Napoli at quarter to 11 p.m. against Torino. That's in the Italian Serie A. PSG Monaco at a quarter to 11 p.m. in the French League One. And then, so those are some of the fixtures that you must look out for. You say we use ghee as well as oil. Ghee is classified butter. Sorry, ghee is clarified butter, which is pure and it's not unhealthy for you if you have it in decent portions, so we don't get fat. Do you play FPL or any fantasy football? Yeah, we do play FPL, although I'm not very good at checking my team. You can go over to the channel under the community section. Under the posts section, you'll find our fantasy league there. The post is there from August the 13th. That's when it was published. The code is there. You can also join in case you wish to join. Although it feels a little too late with only 9 and 8 games left to play for some of those teams, really. But yeah, we do play fantasy on the channel here. It's something that Pedri encouraged us to do, and we created the channel. Okay. I used to be top 3K in the whole world in FPL, but now I fell to 60K. Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. Okay, that's impressive, really. If you're, being in that top, that's remarkable. Then we had started doing predictions on the channel, and then Pedri ran away from the predictions. But anyway, he's been busy with school, so and not intentional. Anyways, so in the FA Cup elsewhere over the weekend, Mansfield Town will come at 3:15 against Arsenal on Saturday. Then Wrexham will play Chelsea at 8:45. Man City at 11 p.m. away to Newcastle. Then on Sunday, Fulham will be up against Southampton at 3 p.m. Port Vale will play Sunderland at 4:30 p.m. Leeds United will play Norwich City at 7:30 p.m. While at 10:30 p.m. West Ham will be up against Brentford. Those are the fixtures that will be coming your way in the FA Cup at the round of 16 to determine teams that will be advancing to the quarterfinals. My predictions for that, not in terms of goals, but in terms of who I think will advance to the quarterfinals. I think Liverpool could nick it and make it to the quarterfinals. Arsenal to get to the quarterfinals. Chelsea to edge Wrexham. Man City to knock out Newcastle, because I feel Newcastle is going to have to rest some of their players. They had to really, really work hard for that victory against Man United, because they have a game in the UEFA Champions League against Barcelona. It's a home game, but and then I do fancy Fulham Southampton. I would fancy Fulham because Port Vale against Sunderland, not an easy game, but fancy Sunderland. Leeds Norwich City, very, very difficult game. Could Norwich stand Leeds at Aaron Road? I'll go with Leeds. West Ham, Brentford, I'll go Brentford to advance. So that's my prediction. But based on those predictions, it will mean by the time we get to the quarterfinals, it will have only Premier League teams left to play at the quarterfinals. But whichever the case that is. Okay, what are your UEFA Champions League predictions? UEFA Champions League, in terms of who will advance, I think over 2 legs, Barcelona will get the better of Newcastle, as I do expect Atletico de Madrid to get the better of Tottenham Hotspur over 2 legs. Sporting Lisbon against Bordeaux Glimot, I think Sporting Lisbon will get the better of Bordeaux Glimot. Arsenal, Bayer Leverkusen. I think Arsenal will edge Bayer Leverkusen. It won't be easy. On the side of PSG, Chelsea. I'm having second thoughts on that one, but I went with Chelsea. Then Liverpool, Galatasaray. I went with Liverpool, even though Galatasaray have already beaten up against Liverpool this season by a goal to nil. Then the other game, Bayern Munich, Atlanta, I went for Bayern Munich. And then Real Madrid, Man City, I went for Man City. So those are my predictions for the UEFA Champions League in terms of teams that could advance to the quarterfinals. When it comes to goal predictions, perhaps I'll give those in our subsequent bulletins, because we do this every Monday to Saturday. For the morning broadcasts, every Monday to Friday, we come between 9 a.m. to 10 onwards. Sometimes we may be a bit late, but it's a routine. And then at night, every Monday to Sunday, yes, Monday to Sunday, we have 11 p.m. broadcasts. Apart from Friday, we come at 9 p.m. around that time, 9:30, 9 p.m. And then on Saturdays, our morning broadcasts come later on at around 10:30 there. But most preferably around 10 for the Saturday morning broadcast. So that's when we usually do it. Otherwise, bruh, it's been nice connecting with you. It's been nice hearing from you. Thank you so much for your insights about India as a country. Thank you so much for your contribution about, football as a sport and the conversation. I hope you make it a routine for you to always join us every now and then, every time, every single day, whenever you can make time, that you become part of our, usual crew. Pedri is a usual suspect. Yes, sometimes he may go AWOL, but he never forgets to support what we do on the channel. So thank you so much, Pedri, for having been part of the conversation. Pedri Bola, also a semi-regular suspect, almost always here with us. HL Motion did join us for the very first time, and every single one of you that has been part of today's conversation, those that have liked the broadcast, those that did not like but were part of the conversation, that listened in for whatever length of time you managed to dedicate to us, it does not go unappreciated. We thank you so much for choosing to be part of the Football Tribe UG community. Allow me to wrap it up here and wish you a wonderful rest of the day and a blessed weekend ahead. Let's do this again at 11 p.m. East African time. That means it will be about 1 a.m. Indian time and things like that. Bye-bye for now.